Okay, everybody, welcome to the Greater Austin STEM Ecosystem PD Day. Make sure to tweet out at us at Austin STEM Eco or with the hashtag Austin STEM, as you can see here on the screen. If you're having trouble navigating, maybe you're not able to see the screen and you would only like to see the speaker at the top on the Zoom screen itself, you'll be able to change it to either speaker view or you can change it to the grid view, and that's where you'll have the ability to kind of navigate the screen a little bit. Just make sure that if you're joining us that you just tell us your name and where you're joining us from. That is for your credit for today, so we'll do that. If you have any questions along the way, please feel free to write to us in the chat box, and then also you can use the reactions along the bottom for us to just kind of be able to navigate that as well. We are going to go ahead, in the interest of time, we are going to go ahead and get started with our presenter for today. So like I said, if you have any questions, please just go ahead and throw those in the chat box. All right, Jules.
Awesome, thanks. Let me just share my screen, make sure you can see my presentation. Is it all there? Can you see mouse technology with purpose?
Yep, we're good.
Awesome, thanks. So my name is Julia Barraford-Temel. I'm with Mouse. We're a nonprofit based out of New York City. However, we do provide services nationally and most of our services in Texas, center in either Austin, I apologize, or the Rio Grande Valley. And as a preface, I have a dog and a small child, so you may be hearing either or both during this presentation. So what is Mouse? Are we? So we are a STEM and tech, creative computing nonprofit. Last year, we trained more than 1,000 teachers in STEM and computer science professional development, giving more than 60,000 students access to STEM and CS education. And what this presentation is going to focus on is our COVID response to distance learning. And this spring, between mid-March and June, we trained over 6,000 teachers and helped more than 150,000 students in New York get access to online learning. And we do have a focus in equity. So 64% of our students are in schools with a free and reduced lunch rate of 70% or higher. So equity is pretty much at the forefront of what we do and who we serve for teachers as well. So how do we train 6,000 teachers in a couple of months? One thing we did was we focused on foundational tech skills that were needed to lead remote classes. The problem was that in New York City, the schools shut down on March 16th with 1 day's notice, right? So Thursday night, they told us schools were shutting down on Friday. And that was all the warning that the teachers had, that the students had. Over the next week, the New York Department of Education was able to give all students in the district a device, if they didn't already have one, so that they could move from in-person to virtual classes. So the problem was, how can schools, teachers, our community protect students and educators to make sure that the same standards of learning were applied across the board? And how can we make sure that, you know, equity was a component of our education? So we had several challenges, but the three foremost that we identified were tech proficiency, inconsistent technology, and instruction preparation. So teachers are expert instructors, but not necessarily in remote learning. So what we found were there were huge gaps in technical skills that needed to be remediated. You know, the New York Department of Education is huge. And before COVID, each school or each district within the New York Department of Education had different learning management systems and softwares. And so we couldn't help connect them and provide the instruction needed across the board for all of the different districts within the larger Department of Education in New York City. That and as we all know, as educators, when you design a course for in-purpose learning, you can't just pivot it to distance learning. So we had to help train teachers to use the new technology to then adapt the courses that had been developed for in-person instruction. So the New York Department of Education invited learning organizations to form a task force to help support the city's 1.1 million students. So we helped determine the scope of their teacher needs, develop a teacher training program, and then roll out the professional development in the shortest time frame as possible. So on the 13th, the 16th of March, they closed the schools. By the 23rd, we rolled out our Intro to Google Classroom's professional development. Each PD had over 100 teachers attend. We had some PDs with 300 teachers in it. And at the time, Mouse had 3 full-time staff members doing professional development, which was not enough. So most of our projects had paused due to COVID, and everybody on the staff dropped everything that they were doing, and anybody on the staff who had been a teacher or had done professional development at some point in their careers just dove in and worked to support the teachers, because we knew that that's what needed to happen so that we could continue our work of equity and STEM education. So by the end of the week, by the 27th, we had trained over 1,700 teachers in Google Classroom and Google Docs. It took us a couple of weeks to get the most emergent education and professional development out there. So it was Intro to Google Docs, Intro to Google Classroom, and just many, many series of office hours so that we could get the staff up and running. After that, by kind of mid-April, we expanded our professional development to intermediate and to specific tools, right? So level 1 and level 2 for Google Slides, level 1 and level 2 for Google Forms. And then our final PD was held in mid-June. And by then we had trained 6,000 teachers in the New York Department of Education. And what we were able to do really is provide, as former educators, we know what a classroom looks like, and we know what they needed to know, and we know how they needed to support. So what does that look like to support a pre-literate student in Google Forms? How can you take Google Forms and make it something that a kindergartner can look at and show their content knowledge? How can you support a social worker or a counselor meet her students' social emotional learning needs when they're trapped in their apartments and potentially unsavory situations? So we are able to really help tailor the professional developments to the needs of the educators in the sessions. So one of the things that Google did was they provided all new public school students, teachers, and staff with access to Google Classroom and all G Suite products. So overnight, so by the 17th of March, the New York Department of Education became the world's largest user of Google Suite. So this helped with inconsistent technology challenge, but it worsened the tech proficiency challenge because a lot of teachers had never used the cloud before or Google's cloud-based products. So with this, we focused on the standardization of the software and the professional development across the most basic aspects of that software, and then also differentiating to the level 2, level 3 intermediate professional development courses. So we ended up with 8 full courses, 119 training sessions, and it cost less than $40 a teacher. So we were able to fund that not through the New York Department of Education, but through Google and some foundational support. And if you're interested, there is an article about the work that we did there. So here's an example. This slide is available if you want to get into it, but this was recorded on the 12th, and there's a video of the professional development with the Google Slides. One of the ways that we did this was we offered them asynchronously so that teachers could access the professional development whenever and wherever they needed it. So on your left, there are some comments from teachers. It was overwhelmingly positive, and the New York Department of Education and Google are planning on working with us again this fall to support even more offerings, because as you know, in New York, instruction will be virtual, and even places that where it is hybrid for the fall, administrators are preparing just in case it transitions to 100% virtual learning. So the way that Mouse creates innovation is really by identifying need, creating the structure, and leading the PD for whatever the need is. We use a lot of third-party professional development or third-party content and develop professional development around that. So we're working with different school districts across the nation to find out where they need help and what we can do specifically to help them. And I have another example before we dive into some interactive activities, because I know just talking at you for an hour is not the best learning experience. So something that we've recently done within the last few weeks is helping solve the issue of summer bridge in New York City. New York City has one of the largest youth employment programs in the nation. It's called SYEP, or Summer Youth Employment Program. For students between the ages of 14 and 24, they are paid a stipend to participate in a career exploration opportunity. What this looks like generally is a work experience, right? They go work at the zoo, or they go work at an organization and take a few classes, and then also get that hands-on experience of what it looks like to have a mentor and do work in a workplace. However, it was suspended because of COVID and funding, and it was resurrected, which was great, but we were given 2 weeks of lead time to roll out the youth employment program. The issue was that most of the summer youth employment providers had to lay off the people they had hired to run these programs. So in those 2 weeks, they had to pivot from their physical workplace experience that they would have given students, and also rehire facilitators who also had to be able to facilitate digitally. So Mouse supported the Summer Youth Employment Program by providing content, creating scheduling suggestions and infrastructure, which I'll share, asynchronous PDs, because there wasn't enough time in the day for everybody to be on at the same time and provide that. We also organized Ask Me Anythings with industry professionals that are available to all of our students, and then we actually opened it up to the community to support all students with an interest in equity. We provide weekly data reports for each program partner, and that means, how many facilitators, how many projects, how many sign-ons, pretty in-depth knowledge. And then we also support them with office hours 3 days a week, not only for the official partners, but any of their facilitators can jump in and ask detailed questions without having to go through their employer. So that means that they are not shy about asking for support and help and making sure that students get the best experience that they can. So for an example, part of SYEP infrastructure, we provided detailed schedules for each week, descriptions of each of our project-based learning courses available. We then gave them suggestions on how they might want to blend their programs, themes, and work into our capstone projects. Provided them a schedule, and you can check that out if you're interested. And then we also provided the asynchronous training videos. So this is an example of it. So week one, you can see we've done it hour by hour, project by project, what we thought would work best, which projects were asynchronous, synchronous, or either, and whether they were best for whole groups or groups. So really trying to make it the lightest lift possible for the providers to facilitate knowledge and education for their students, since their background isn't in learning or virtual learning. This is another example, right? So for example, our scripted viral media course or project, it's a summary of the project, right? Discover essentials of viral video creation. It can be synchronous or asynchronous, and works best for by yourself or with small groups. So we've done this with pretty much every week and every project and every course, just to support our summer youth providers. And then this is another example of how we do that. This is our Intro to Design project, Build a House with SketchUp, right? So we were working with somebody that had a civic engagement theme, right? So how could you take our course project and then integrate it into a civic engagement theme? Or how could you make it a workplace challenge? And so a lot of our content is really relatable, and you can make it work with different thematic aspects and approaches. And before I get into the next section, does anybody have any questions that I could answer? Not yet? Okay. So I'm just going to explain a little bit about Mouse. I talked about how we provided professional development, but the mainstay of our work is content. We have a learning platform called Mouse Create. It has, sorry, this isn't updated. It has 16 different STEM and creative computing courses on it. There's the ability to create custom playlists, review student work, and award badges. We also can create custom content for educators and custom professional development. On the youth-facing side, we have Mouse Create. At this point, it is free for the 2020-2021 year to support schools with their challenges with hybrid and distance learning. In addition to that, this spring, to support students, we rolled out Mouse Open Projects, which is a free curriculum resource that allows students to get going with Mouse's STEM and creative computing projects, but without an educator, without a sign-in, or without an account. And we've handpicked the projects that need no materials. So you could do this anywhere, on a phone, on a tablet, on a computer. So Mouse learning principles are that our projects and courses are active, social, that they're constructivist and experiential, that they are learning centered and engaging, and that they are accessible. And so this does not end just because we are working with distance or hybrid learning. All of our courses and projects still embody all of our learning principles. These are, having trouble. There we go. So we have more than 200 projects across 30 competency areas, ranging from design, coding, syllable technology. It runs the gamut, and we can help you handpick courses that take the fewest materials or no materials at all. We also have a project gallery, so students can share their work, and monthly micro projects where students can compete and submit their work and display it. Mouse also aligns to the standards, right? So we align to Common Core, ISTE, and JSS, and the K-12 Computer Science Framework. We have a complete breakdown in the standards, so if that's something you're interested in, we can give you that. Additionally, our projects can really be applied across content areas, and I can get into that a little bit later. But year after year, our students report that Mouse increases their creativity, their problem-solving skills, their communication and leadership skills, and they're motivated to pursue a career in STEM. since we work with mostly students of color in New York City and other urban areas, we really want to make sure that those students feel empowered to pursue a career in STEM or computer science. And so that's something we're particularly proud of. So we have plenty of time. I didn't want to talk at you too long, but let's dig in. Does anybody have a question at the moment? No? And Lena, would you throw out that, that link?
Yep.
Thanks. So this is a link to Mouse Open Projects. This is our, well, they're both free now. Mouse Create used to have a fee and now no longer does. But this is our project site where everything is completely accessible. There is no need to have an email, a login, and none of these courses use materials. We still have our lesson plan here, so that's something that you know, a parent was interested in when they're facilitating. It's here. And our Mouse Create does have this as well. It has the overview, the badges and courses, any associated projects, student outcomes, the standards it's tied to, any materials, and then the activity flow, right? So this will take 2 minutes, this will take 5 minutes. Any preparation, glossary, evidence, and then the evidence checklist. In addition, we have debriefing and extension questions for almost every project. Here are the steps. The only difference really between Mouse Open Projects and Mouse Create is Mouse Create has more than 200 projects, and then there's also on the dashboard an area where students can submit their work, and if you're an educator, you can go in and review and comment and award badges, and you know, manage your groups and manage your playlists. I'm not going to get into that here today, but if you're interested, just send me an email. Right now, there's no charge for a full account for the rest of the year. So I'm gonna see. I want to see your faces, or at least your initials. Let's get a little bit interactive. So this is from our Intro to Design course, and it just talks about what design is, and then the different types of design. So this is a course and a project where you might want to start talking to your students about the types of design that they're interested in, right? Do they want to get into industrial design, graphic design, web design? There's just, you can kind of go and open their eyes to the different types of design. How do their interests align to something that exists as a really exciting career opportunity in STEM? And then from here, we start talking about user design. So step 3, going up or going down. Can anyone tell me what is unusual about this design element?
Jules, do you want them to unmute or?
I don't think the group is very big, so feel free to unmute. Yeah.
I assume it's that you don't usually see it, the one pointing up like that underneath it. I mean, actually, elevator buttons are the worst for communicating. So this is amazing. It's simple.
It is simple. But do you know which one is up and which one is down?
Well, that's an interesting thing, actually. I know what I was going with is if I want to go up, I'm going to be going for the button above, and if I want to go down. So I think the one on the left is for going down and the one on the right is for going up.
I mean, I would think that too, but then looking at it a second time, kind of like an optical illusion, it could be the other way around.
Could be the other way around. That's a little bit of a, you know, it's fun. It's probably not practical. That's too bad because I like the looks.
Yeah, right. So let's see, we'll go into the next one. Can anybody see anything that would be problematic with this bathroom stall?
This is a pet peeve. I hate to steal the microphone again, but this is a huge pet peeve. My mother had a stroke several years ago, and I became hypersensitive to the way we do these handicap rooms here all on, and it's just, you can't, you've got the bar behind. Yeah, I think it's they were thinking they could wheel the wheelchair up. It might, depends on the size of the wheelchair. Then once they get up, they don't have anything to hold on to lower themselves down to the seat. I mean, and then on top of that, the toilet paper is way over out of their reach. I mean, it's ridiculous.
It's absolutely ridiculous, right? So like, if you were in a wheelchair, how are you supposed to get that toilet paper? If you were able to stand up, you would still have to get up off the toilet and walk over and get the toilet paper. And so if you had your wheelchair in the space between the toilet and the toilet paper, that would be another impediment. So one of the reasons I love Mouse and I love the work that we do is because it's about design with purpose. It's about tech with purpose, right? So, it was kind of silly asking about the elevator buttons, is it this way or is it this way? But now this opens up a conversation about what is good design, right? What is user design? Why is it important to bring in user interviews? And B, what does equity look like, right? What if they had asked one person in a wheelchair designing this bathroom, do you think they would have designed it this way? We could then bring in the concepts of ableism. We could bring in the concepts of ability and equity and accessibility. And that could start a larger conversation within a classroom. And that's a really great way to start bringing kids and students and get them more involved in a digital conversation. This is another great slide, right? So students might right away see the problem with this particular slide. It looks great. Who doesn't want a slide that goes in two directions? But what would be the problem with this design?
If the kids go at the same time, they're gonna crash or bump into each other and fall off the slide. It's too
Absolutely.
dangerous.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. If they go at the same time to go down two ways, it could be dangerous.
I'm seeing pain.
I see
Just
pain.
pain.
What happens if their legs don't go one way or the other, right? Yeah. So this is we named it the playground of doom. So this is an actual slide design, right? So this would totally get kids talking about it and excited about, well, like, what would a real playground look like, and what did your playground look like, and what would you have changed, right? And that concept of user experience. I'm going to nag on artificial intelligence, but my husband always can get Google to talk to him, and I can't, because my voice is not low enough, because the person that designed my Google Nest was a man with a different voice register. And so that's a user design issue. Or then you could bring it into more serious design issues. I'll get into that in a moment. But who wants to go to Hamfest? What is Hamfest? Anybody guess? I'm looking at this beautiful design.
Well, I see fire training. Is it ham radio operating?
Yes, it's ham radio operating. So, is it clear
No.
what this is? Is it like a meat fest? Is it a radio fest? If you're trying to get new users into ham radios, right? You might want to explain what it is. Is this flyer pleasing to the eye? These are all great things to explore with students. This could also lead into a topic of conversation with certain fonts are more accessible to students with learning disabilities or dyslexia. Do these, the mix of fonts create a space where everybody is, it's more equitable for reading? How could we redesign this to make the meaning more evident, but also make something more accessible. And so this is what I was referencing earlier with bad design can be dangerous, right? Like, so we all know that cars and seatbelts were designed with the average male in mind, which is why women die at a much higher rate in car accidents. If you look at these 2 bottles of medication, what are the differences? Do you see any differences or similarities?
Okay, I'm gonna have to speak up again. This is amazing. I love this whole activity. The problem is you can see a slightly different color on the one side. Not everybody's going to notice it. And when you don't have medicines well labeled, for those who are truly elderly and don't always have someone who's overlooking what they take, they could get confused. And of course, one is real low dose and the other one is a higher dose.
Mm-hmm. Yes, exactly. Right. So, I mean, this is on an IV medication, but this happens very frequently with medications. It can be confusing to the elderly, or if somebody, can't find their reading glasses, anybody over 40 is in danger. I know that I always have to double check when I'm giving my toddler medication, because some of the ibuprofens are one suspension and some of them are another. So as you can see, right, these are both the same drug. The label is very similar. They're similar colors, they're similar designs, but one is 10,000 units per milliliter and the other is 10. Right? This is heparin. It's an anticoagulant. And what happened, and what got press was Dennis Quaid's preemie twins were given a dose 10,000 times the amount that they should have received. Because this, the one on the right, the light blue one, is often used for people who have IVs so that their IVs don't coagulate and they can get the medications. And it happened that there were several infants that died because of people not checking the medication before administering it and giving small babies or children that were on IVs huge doses of an anticoagulant, right? So how can design be dangerous? It can literally take a life, just bad design, right? When you think about it, oh, design, it's inconvenient. Oh, I didn't like what that poster looked like, but it can actually take lives. And so this is a really great opportunity for students then to see the strength in their differences, the strength in their, when everybody looks at something and looks at it differently, right? And so how can you give the students the opportunity to learn about something as simple as design that could change lives? That, that kid doodling in that notebook ad nauseum when they should be taking notes, how can they channel that power for good, right? And really change lives. And so this lays it out for the students. And then the article's there if you're interested in reading about it. But then you could ask the students, how would you change this? How would you make this a different situation? How could you have changed the outcomes of those children's lives? And then it starts talking about what is good design, right? So design is part of innovation. What is the actual aspect? And so we've asked them to evaluate the Flexfoot Cheetah and the Apple iPhone based on the criteria above. And then how also would they make suggestions, right? And so this is where, again, I love Mouse because it's not just about STEM and it's not just about computer science. It's about how can you elevate something and make it accessible and interesting and relatable to everybody, right? So for example, the Apple, the iPhone, the touch screen, we all love them, but what are some problems when we're thinking about the practicalness or the innovativeness or the simplicity or the need, Are there any ways that we could improve a touchscreen or any user experiences that you could bring to change it? Why don't I give you, we have plenty of time. I didn't create too long a project or slide just because I didn't want to talk at you forever. It's really bad instructional design. Why don't I give you 3 minutes, and you can choose either the FlexFoot Cheetah or the Apple iPhone, or just the touch screen, if that's better. What makes something a good design? Or what's a user experience that you could take and use to improve either one of these projects or products? 3:06, let's come back at 3:10. Okay, so what do you think? Do you think they're good designs? Do you think they're great designs? Do you have user feedback for them? Did anyone pick one or the other, or dive into both? I'd love to hear from you.
Well, I think the FlexFoot design or FlexFoot Cheetah meets more the criteria for those questions. It solves a problem, fills a need, and with the information it provides, it's easier to understand. It is a unique innovation. It stands out. Now, the only thing is, will it be practical? Who knows? It's possibly something very expensive. So, and the Apple iPhone,
Yeah.
I wouldn't, I don't like that. I'm just old and I don't want something new every year. And that's hugely expensive. So I don't like that one.
I think you're preaching to the choir here. Does anybody else have any thing they'd like to share in regards to the two designs that we saw? If you have, think it's a great design, good design, or if you have user feedback?
Well, the FlexFoot Cheetah does allow people to run, and they can run somewhat faster than sometimes than they did before. I happen to have heard a podcast, so I know they don't corner. So they lose speed in a race, so they lose their advantage. And I think the reason we have it is because we can't make a prosthetic leg that allows people to really run anywhere near what they could before. I don't know, I'm not an expert on that, but I think that's part of the problem. I have no idea how expensive they are. I would think, you know, one of the trade-offs would be that when you lose a limb, that's pretty devastating. You feel more earthbound, and this would allow people to feel a little bit more, they got a little special something in their step, not to make a pun or something, but I also agree about the iPhone, the fact that almost every year they come up with, sometimes it's a tiny change, sometimes it's a big one. So they're not made to take the new change, like download some new software so it can show what they've come up with. And it's expensive. Siri will suddenly start talking to you. You can still do accidental phone calls. It's and it's heavy. The bigger it gets every year, it just gets heavier and bigger. I think I have an iPhone, but I get annoyed with it periodically, for sure. So it's expensive. So I think both of the designs have good points and bad points. Probably Apple iPhone has more negatives against it. I don't know if other people agree with me.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. Also, the FlexFoot Cheetah is much more of a niche, and it's a less utilized market, thank goodness. But yeah, I think one of the things that I would be wanting to check out when evaluating it is, does it cause less joint pain? Maybe because it's almost more buoyant than, say, a more realistic prosthetic. What's the price point? How does that connect with equity? Does that mean only people who have premium healthcare get access to less painful prosthetics or more mobility? Or also, for example, like if it was a kid, how does it grow with them? How could we maybe utilize this to grow with them? Something like that. And then I think, yeah, the iPhone, I go Android because I'm just not going to invest that much in the phone. You can't make me. But yeah, I think what I think about is having to teach my in-laws how to use their smartphones. And so it's one thing when you can update the software and they're using the same phone and it has similar markings. But it's another thing when you know, maybe an older person has to relearn how to use that phone, and it becomes almost an impediment to their safety in some ways because they don't want to use the phone. It's too hard to navigate, too complicated, or the weight of it, right? Maybe they're not carrying it around as much as they used to because it's just so heavy, or it hurts their hand to pick up. Or how does that relate to folks with a disability, right? Somebody with cerebral palsy. An iPhone might be hard to hold because it is getting heavier and heavier every year, even if it does get easier to navigate. So I think those are aspects of design to explore and bring in, again, those conversations of equity, and then also bring them into, you know, to content, right? If you're talking about design, you could talk about graphic design, you could talk about industrial design, and get those kids interested where you can meet them. And so this is our design challenge with this particular project, right? So you pick a bad design. You can pick one of these designs. You can find your own, decide what is a problem, and then brainstorm a better design. And so you could do this individually, right? If you were doing distance learning and it was hard to do a joint project, or you could do it as a whole group or as small groups. And then either draw, or if you had the resources and materials, create a prototype, and it supports the students. And so this design challenge on our Mouse Create, the next step would be then to submit either a picture of their design, whether they built it, or if it was on a website, send the link, or just take a picture of, you know, their drawing and then submit it for educator feedback. However, I am focusing on Mouse Open projects just because it's built around the idea that students can participate on their own without an educator, or it's easier for educators that might have some struggles in the very beginning to get their kids signed up. Can I answer any questions about Mouse's COVID response or Mouse Create or Mouse content?
Is this designed more for like upper elementary and middle school and high school kids, or does it go all the way down to the primary levels?
So this Mouse Create, Mouse Open projects are designed for middle and high school.
Okay.
Just because the reading level is at a sixth grade level. However, if you wanted to use it with elementary school, you are more than welcome. There just might be a little bit more translation that's needed. And we are offering Mouse Create for free for the whole school year. There are no restrictions. You don't have to be a middle schooler or a high schooler to access it. We also do Scratch, creative computing, professional development, and Scratch Junior, and things like that. And we actually also have Scratch creative computing on our Mouse Create as well. And actually, since we have time, I might just open it up so you can see. So this is Mouse Create, the full version. Around so I can see. Oops, sorry, we're doing some back-end work. We're upgrading to single sign-on for Google, and so we're really excited. But with that back-end work, sometimes it's a little irregular right now. There we go. Okay, that's better. Okay, so this is Mouse Create, the full version. You can see it looks similar to Mouse Open projects, but here you have the playlist. So this is the list of curated projects for the students. Here you have group work. So this is any of your students that are part of your group. You can see what they've submitted, what their collaborators, which collaborators they submitted it with, and if it has comments or if it's been reviewed. Badges, the badges have been awarded. So if any students complete the series of projects that lead to a badge, then it automatically pops up here and you can award their badges. And then whatever members are in that group. Here you can see the projects, and you can see the project list is much more extensive than our Mouse Open projects. So our courses here are here. This is the project finder. So those courses are circuitry and electronics, coding, design with purpose. So that's a design course where students create and iterate a prototype of a solution for assistive technology. Digital portfolios can be used really as cumulative assessment, but it's user design. We have a built-in educator course. Green technology, we have impact game design. So creating a game that is an impact game instead of just one for recreation. Intro to design, that course we looked at was part of this course, or the project we looked at was part of this course. We have a series of 3 IT courses: IT admin, IT essentials, and tech team. Some of our educators use tech team to help their students in the special education space with communication, because it's how to create a help desk and how to speak and ask questions to get the answers that they need to fix technology. We have Scratch Creative Computing, the whole course, step-by-step with all the student outcomes, extension and debriefing questions. We have Scratch Creative Computing 2, which is an extension of Scratch and impact games. Syllable Technology integrates circuits and art. And then Video Creator is a course where students can create their own videos, learn about video editing, the history of videos, how it can be framed as propaganda or create a PSA. And then web literacy is kind of your basic course on how to create a strong password and dealing with strangers on the internet. And then you can also filter by skill or by setting. But I won't get into that deeply. If you're interested, you can send me an email and I can send you some information about that. But I appreciate everybody's time very, very much. I know you could have chosen different sessions or different things to do today. So thank you so much. This slide deck is available. And if you have any questions, just shoot me an email. It's Julia@Mouse, and it's also on the slide deck itself.